In my 20s, I spent 5 or 6 years being a drug addict. I had an unholy attraction to opiate narcotics, and it got me in a lot of trouble, of course. At one point, I was a psychology student by day, and by night, a thief. I stole morphine from my lab rats. It's a lot more than they needed. And I also went out and stole things from pharmacies and medical centers, and I got arrested, I got convicted, I got kicked out of graduate school, my girlfriend left me. Despite all that crap, I still couldn't stop for quite a while, about 2.5 more years. I tried a lot of times, as people do. Addicts try to stop a lot, and it's hard. And I did finally quit, and I got back into grad school, and I got a PhD in psychology and went on to become a professor in psychology and neuroscience, which is what I've been doing the last 20-something years. And for the last 5 of those years, I've gone back to addiction, this time as a scientist and kind of a commentator, trying to blend subjective stories of addiction with the science, the neuroscience especially, of addiction, what happens in the brain. And I think that there's a lot of scope for that to help us understand how addiction works and why it's so hard to stop. So in that context, a lot of people ask me, how did you quit? I mean, how did you actually do it? And the answer for a long time has been, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how it worked. But now, especially in preparation for this conference, I've been thinking a lot about trust, and I think that the answer is exactly self-trust. I think that is the pivotal thing, the thing that addicts need and find so difficult to achieve is self-trust. So I'm going to talk about two psychological phenomena that I think help explain why why self-trust is so elusive, so difficult for addicts to achieve, and why it's so pivotal, so important in order for them to get better. The first of these is called ego depletion. These are the parts of the prefrontal cortex that are in charge of impulse control, and they get tired like a muscle. They start to wear out, so you can't keep impulse control going actively for a long period of time. The classic experiment is hungry people are brought into the lab, and they are sat down in front of a bowl of chocolate chip cookies or a bowl of radishes and told they can't eat any. And then 15 or so minutes later, they are given a set of cognitive tasks, and the ones who couldn't eat the cookies don't do as well. They seem to be missing some special cognitive resource that's needed for control. And so that's how it works. And the problem for addicts is that it's more serious because they have to keep up self-control not just for 15 minutes, but for hour after hour after hour, day after day after day. And it's extremely taxing, which is why when people think of addicts as being lazy or weak, it's really just the opposite. They work very hard to get through the day. The other problem is that you're trying to keep up control when there are cues all around you, cues to the thing that you're addicted to. So the chocolate chip cookies are never far away, and that makes it more difficult. Recent research shows that if you believe that you can control your impulses, then you do a better job in an ego depletion context. You can hold on for longer. Nobody knows exactly why, but it could be because you don't have to stave off the feelings of self-doubt. You can just focus on the single task of restraining that one impulse. So that's also a real problem for addicts because they don't believe they can do it. They don't believe in their ability to control themselves. Why should they? It never works. They've tried it many, many times and it never works, and so they don't believe they can do it. And so this lack of self-trust is a second, bullet in their capacity to withhold their impulses. Okay, it's called delay discounting, and that is the tendency for humans and other animals to value immediate rewards above long-term rewards or future rewards. So if I were to offer you €5 today or 10 euros next week, you would probably go for 5 euros today. It would seem more valuable, even though objectively it's not. So that's delay discounting. It's built into all mammals and birds as well. And for addicts, what that amounts to is, should I get high now, today, tonight, or should I hold off so that I can have a happy marriage in next month, or keep my job, or get a better job, or stay out of jail, or have money in the bank? These distant rewards pale in comparison with the immediate reward, and that's a problem. And it's especially a problem for addicts because that part of your brain right there, the blue one, is called the striatum, and that is the area that's responsible for, for achieving goals, for seeking goals. And that area is flooded with a neurochemical called dopamine when addicts are anticipating getting the thing that they're addicted to. The function of dopamine's been around for hundreds of millions of years, and its evolutionary function is to get you to focus on what's going on right now, right in front of you. So in other words, go for the low-hanging fruit or the low-hanging sexual partner. That's a terrific advantage for evolution, but it's not a great advantage for addicts who are trying not to focus on the immediate present. So you see, that makes it more difficult as well. Okay, so is there an antidote for delayed discounting? I think that, and some other people have said that the antidote might be a dialogue that you have with yourself, what you could call an intertemporal dialogue between your future self and your present self. So your future self says, just hold on, the craving will go away after a while, and you're going to be okay, and in a few weeks things are going to be a lot better. And the present self says, okay, I believe you, and that's cool, I'll see you later. The problem for addicts is that their future self is also an addict. Because if you've already been an addict for 5 years or 10 years, it's not very likely that you're not going to be an addict in a few weeks or a month from now. So you see, your future self isn't really someone you can trust. And the dialogue that you have with that future self might be, rather ineffective because it doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't get you past the moment. It doesn't get you out of where you are. So, if you can't trust your present self and you can't trust your future self, who can you trust? For addicts, the answer is very clear. You trust the thing that you're addicted to. And it's not just drugs. It can be drugs, it can be booze, it can be cigarettes, it can be sex, it can be the internet, it can be gambling. There's that whole range of things. They all function pretty much the same. It makes you feel better for a while, but not for that long. And then you feel worse afterwards, and so you feel betrayed again, and you've betrayed yourself. And so whatever little bit of self-trust you were able to muster is then used up. Okay, so the way I quit, the 187th time or so that I tried, I wrote the word no on a piece of paper. I put it on the wall where I had to go by it every day, and I told myself, I can do this. I can say no to myself for an hour, which means I can say no to myself for another hour. And I started to believe it. I worked it. I pep-talked myself until I really believed I could do it. I also told myself that I wasn't going to do drugs again ever, not just for 6 months or a year, but forever. And that seemed much more credible. So I formed that kind of trusting relationship in a future self. And it worked. It worked for me. And I'll end by saying that the treatment programs for addiction nowadays seem to stress pretty much the opposite. Instead of trusting yourself, they often emphasize giving your trust to a higher power, whether that's God or the group or the doctor, seeing yourself as having a disease, so you're kind of helpless. And I think that's the wrong way to go. I think the kind of help that addicts need is help in forming, finding a part of themselves that they can trust, and forming that intimate dialogue so that they can reach out for a future that they can live with. Thank you.